A lot of people are starting this year with a quiet but persistent worry. Something feels off, like progress has slowed down or maybe even slipped backward. You worked all year, you tried to be disciplined, but now your financial goals for 2026 already feel harder to reach. Savings did not grow the way you expected. Debt did not shrink the way you planned. And the sense of moving forward feels smaller than it should. Right now, about half of Americans say they feel this way. That alone tells you something important. But that is not the full story. Because what people are reacting to is not just their own decisions. There is a deeper shift happening in the cost of living, and it is easy to miss. Once you see it, the frustration starts to make more sense. Not better, but clearer. Most people begin the year with a simple plan. Save a bit more, spend a bit less, pay down a card, build some cushion. These are not unrealistic goals. They are grounded. They are reasonable. But then a few months pass, and something starts to feel different. The numbers stop lining up. The same paycheck does not stretch the same way. And slowly, the gap between what you planned and what is happening begins to widen. So the first reaction is internal. Maybe I overspent. Maybe I slipped. Maybe I lost discipline. But here is what people are missing. The rules of everyday spending have changed. Not in one big, obvious way, but in dozens of small ways. And those small shifts add up. This is where things get more complicated. If you look at inflation on paper, it does not look extreme right now. Prices are still rising, but more slowly. From a distance, things seem like they are stabilizing. But daily life tells a different story, because the categories that matter most are still moving up. Housing, insurance, utilities, eating out, basic services. These are not optional. These are the foundation of your budget. And when those rise, everything else has to adjust. Think about a simple example. A household that spent $2,000 a month on essentials a couple of years ago might now be spending closer to $2,400. That difference alone can wipe out a savings plan, even if nothing else changes, even if your habits stay exactly the same. Now add the smaller shifts. A subscription goes up a few dollars. Your phone plan adds a fee you barely notice. Car insurance jumps at renewal. Your groceries cost just enough more that each trip feels heavier. None of these changes feel dramatic on their own, but together they create steady pressure, and that pressure never really turns off. You feel it every week, every month, every time you check your balance. That is where the disconnect starts, because the system your budget was built on is no longer behaving the same way, and the changes are hard to isolate. There is no single thing to cut that fixes it. It is spread across everything. Now add another layer. Many people are earning more than they did a few years ago. Wages have gone up, but the timing is off. Prices moved first, and they moved faster. Income followed, but not always enough to catch up. So a raise often just keeps you in place. It does not move you forward. And that creates a strange feeling. You are earning more, but it does not feel like progress. It feels like you are just holding your ground. This is one of the hidden shifts behind the frustration. The usual signals of progress are not working the same way. Higher income used to mean more breathing room. Now it often just means keeping up. And when your expectations are based on how things used to work, that gap becomes frustrating. There is another shift happening too. It is not just prices, it is how we spend. More of our spending is now small and frequent. Subscriptions, delivery fees, convenience charges, digital purchases. They are easy to say yes to. They feel manageable in the moment. $5 here, $10 there. But they add up, and more importantly, they are harder to keep track of. In the past, your budget was defined by a few big expenses. Rent, car payment, utilities. Now a growing share of spending is scattered, and that makes it harder to feel in control. You are not making one big decision. You are making dozens of small ones, often without thinking about it. So when you look back and ask where the money went, the answer is not obvious. and that uncertainty adds to the stress. Even if the reality is more complex than it seems, there is also the issue of expectations. A lot of people came into this year expecting some relief. Inflation would slow. Costs would level out. There would be a chance to catch up. But what actually happened is more subtle. Prices stopped rising as fast, but they did not come down. So the relief never fully showed up. And that creates a gap between what people expected and what they experienced. That gap can feel like failure, even when it is not. Because nothing really reset, it just stopped getting worse as quickly. And if you are trying to rebuild savings or pay down debt, that difference matters a lot. Now look at housing. For most households, this is the biggest expense, and it has changed in ways that are hard to reverse. Rent increases from the past few years are still there. Mortgage rates are still higher than they used to be. Property taxes and maintenance costs keep rising. So even if other prices slow down, housing holds your budget at a higher level. That reduces flexibility everywhere else. It leaves less room to adjust. And it makes every other increase feel heavier because there is less buffer. Yet then there is insurance. Health, auto, home. These costs have been rising quietly, often without a clear reason. Premiums go up, coverage shifts, deductibles change. And these adjustments tend to show up once or twice a year, which makes them feel sudden, but their impact lasts all year. For many middle-class households, this can mean hundreds more each month, not from one big jump, but from layers of smaller ones. Now think about food. Grocery prices are not surging the way they were, but they are not going back either, and eating out is still expensive. So the baseline cost of feeding a household stays high, and you feel that constantly. You buy groceries every week, so even small increases show up again and again. All of these pieces form a pattern, not one major crisis, but pressure in many places at once. And that is what makes it hard to respond. If one expense spikes, you can adjust. If everything edges up at the same time, it is harder to rebalance. That is why so many people feel like their goals are slipping. Not because of one bad choice, but because the environment changed around them, quietly, gradually, and consistently. But there is another side to this. The pressure is real. But the feeling of being completely off track is not always accurate. This is where it helps to zoom out. Many households are still holding their position. They are paying their bills. They are managing their obligations. They are adapting. But it does not feel like success. Because the definition of success has not adjusted. People are comparing today to a version of normal that no longer exists. And that creates a sense of falling behind. Even when they are holding steady, that distinction matters, because it changes how you interpret your situation. If it feels like failure, the response becomes emotional, stress, frustration, guilt. But if you see that the environment has shifted, the response becomes more practical. What changed? What can I adjust? What is still in my control? That shift in thinking does not remove the pressure, but it makes it easier to deal with. There is also the issue of visibility. Progress used to be easier to see. Savings went up, debt went down. There were clear signs that things were improving. Now progress is often quieter. You might be preventing debt from growing instead of paying it down. You might be maintaining savings instead of building them. Those are still wins, but they do not feel the same. They feel like standing still, even though they take effort and discipline. This is part of why things feel heavier than the data suggests, because the emotional reward is weaker. You are doing the work, but the payoff is less visible. And over time, that can wear you down. So what does all of this really mean? It means the feeling of being derailed is not just about personal choices. It reflects a broader shift in how money moves through everyday life. Higher baseline costs, more fragmented spending, income that lags behind price changes, expectations that have not caught up yet. The pressure is real, but it is also structural. And recognizing that matters because it changes how you respond. Instead of asking, "Why am I failing?" you start asking, "What has changed?" Instead of assuming your plan was wrong, you question whether the conditions around it have shifted. This is not about lowering your standards. It is about adjusting them to reality. For many people, that means smaller steps, longer timelines, more flexibility. Not because they lack discipline, but because the environment demands it. And there is one more thing worth remembering. This is not just happening to you. When half the country feels behind, it is not individual failure. It is a shared experience. That does not make it easier day to day, but it does add context. You are not alone in this. You are responding to something bigger, and that can take some of the weight off because it removes the need to blame yourself for every gap. At the end of the day, this is not just a story about money. It is a story about expectations, about how quickly things changed, and how slowly we adjusted to those changes. The cost of living did not just rise. It shifted in ways that are harder to see, harder to measure, and harder to respond to. So if your goals feel like they are slipping this year, try asking a different question. Not just what did I do wrong, but what changed around me. That is where clarity starts. And right now, clarity matters more than certainty. It will not remove the pressure, but it will help you understand it. And that is the first step toward adapting to it.